Shalom, Erev Tov. Good evening. We're about to start. Okay, tonight we're talking about one of my favorite topics. It's pretty strong concepts, but I think we will enjoy it very much. Our parasha, okay, we have two parashot, Acharei and Kedoshim, but Kedoshim talks about being holy. So what does it exactly mean to be holy? Let's start with a regular idea. On a Sunday afternoon, somebody wants to relax. Let's say it's the Super Bowl. He wants to drink a beer, eat some pretzels. Is this good or bad? So, it's good, as we will learn soon, to start with something light, to laugh a little bit. In a dark alleyway at night, a police officer noticed someone involved in suspicious activity, and he asked him, "What are you doing here?" And the man says, "Officer, I'm nothing, I'm not doing anything." Then he notices somebody else and says, "And you, sir, what are you doing with him?" Says, "Oh, I'm just helping him." So doing nothing, is that good or bad? In other words, according to Judaism. Let me fix this. Okay. If you can mute your phones, please, so we don't have noise in the background. Thank you. Just one moment. Okay. Okay. So how does Judaism look at recreational activities? Like, sitting on the couch, enjoying a game. Is this good, bad, or neither one? So most people will say, this is not good or bad. I'm sitting, I'm watching a game, drinking something I enjoy. Nobody's getting hurt. As far as that, I'm not doing anything good or bad, you can say. But as we will learn today, Judaism has a different view of things. There is no neutral activities. Either it's good or it's bad. It's a zero-sum game. Now, obviously, there is big differences. It's not the same a person that commits armed robbery, that someone that rips a tag from a mattress where it says, "Do not do that." There is different levels of good and bad, but as we will learn today, really, those are the options in Judaism. So let's start with first text. I hope you all got it. I sent it on the WhatsApp group. It says, text 1a on student page 21. וידבר השם אל משה לאמור, דבר אל כל עדת בני ישראל ואמרת להם, קדושים תהיו כי קדוש אני השם אלוקיכם. God spoke to Moshe saying, speak to the entire congregation of the children of Israel and say to them, you shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, I'm holy. So first of all, it's a little strange, this concept that we have to be holy. What does it mean exactly to be holy? Isn't that the whole purpose of Judaism, of all the Torah and mitzvot, to be holy? It's like making a law that you have to obey the law. Obviously, we have to follow the law. So what is the idea? Do we have a mitzvah? It's like you have to follow the law to the. So why how is different being holy than following Torah and mitzvot that we're anyways commanded? Does it mean I have to be wearing talit and tefillin a whole day, or have to be praying a whole day, speaking in Hebrew all day, or there is something more internal? How do we do holy? So there is different explanations on this. We'll start as usual with Rashi, which is the pshat, the simple text 1b. Kedoshim tiyu. What does it mean you shall be holy? Separate yourself from sexual immorality and from sin. For wherever one finds a barrier against sexual immorality, one finds holiness. For example, they, the Kohanim, shall not take in marriage a woman who is a prostitute or one who was profaned. I, God, who sanctifies you, am holy. Also, you should not profane his offspring. I am God who sanctifies him. Also, they should be holy. They should not take in marriage a woman who is a prostitute who was profaned. So this seems to be a very basic level of how to keep holy. Just be careful, stays from something that is unholy. Ramban, Nachmanides, takes a more global approach to this idea, and he says, don't get carried away with the pleasures of the world, even if they are permissible, even if you're allowed. So don't get carried away, don't indulge too much in it. So it seems interesting because Judaism is a very strict religion compared to others, with the kosher food, with so many aspects of our lives are ruled, and there is laws that govern so much of our behavior. And then Rambam said, oh, but that's not enough. Even what you're allowed to do, also don't indulge in it too much. So what does it mean in practical terms? So of course, you're not going to go to a non-kosher restaurant, but even if there is a 5-star amazing kosher restaurant, don't indulge there too much. Don't go every day. So there's no prohibition against buying a Rolls Royce or even a private jet or anything like that. But Judaism warns about extras in life. Don't indulge too much in those things, that they are not prohibited. In other words, don't get carried away in self-indulgence. So the fact that God doesn't forbid something doesn't mean that you have to indulge in every day. God made kosher, some ice cream that is kosher or chocolate. Doesn't mean that my diet has to be chocolate and ice cream all day. I have to have some way to curb my desire for physical things. Text number 2. This is what Rambam says. The Torah prescribes certain sexual practices and forbade certain foods, but it permitted relations with one's wife and the consumption of meat and wine. The pleasure seeker does find license to be lecherous with his wife, to become a drunk, or consume an abundance of meat, or speak profanely, things which are not directly forbidden by the Torah. One might thus excuse his abominable behavior because it technically falls between the boundaries of the Torah. Therefore, this verse, you should be holy, is mentioned after the Torah has detailed all of the activities that are to be curtailed entirely, for it presents us with a general and comprehensive command that we are to be separated from overindulgence. So, what Ramban is saying here, that we have to curb our indulgence in the permissible. Why? So we don't fall on the deep end of hedonism and blame the Torah for it. So the Torah said there is kosher wine. Yes, that doesn't mean that you have to be drinking it every day. So also, no, it's not just to stay away from bad, but also to empower us to maximize our human potential to serve Hashem, to have a life full of purpose. So how do we do that? We can achieve self-mastery if we're always indulging in every luxury, in every desire of our heart. Rabbeinu Bechaya is very clear. He was a biblical commentator from Spain, and in text number 3, he says the following: a wise person ought to break and overcome his desires. Breaking one's desires ought to be something cherished. Thus, King Solomon said, desire becomes pleasure to the soul, meaning a desire overcome is something sweet to the wise. Now, from where do we arrive that one who follows the desires of the heart transgresses the entire Torah? King Solomon revealed this idea when he said, he who separated seeks lust. In all sound wisdom, he is exposed. In other words, one who chases pleasures finds himself separated. He will be left alone, for all will avoid him due to his wicked ways. Therefore, the Torah has commanded us to refrain from desires, even permissible ones, as the rabbis of blessed memory say, sanctify yourself by refraining from which is forbidden to you. Anyone who refrains from the fulfillment of pleasure is called holy. So earlier we asked, what is the point of saying be holy? It's like making a law to obey the law. And we're saying no. What to be holy means to go above the letter of the law, to do more than what God is commanding you to do. Rabbi Lazar Moshe Zikri was a Kabbalist and a poet. His family moved to Tzfat from Spain during the expulsion from Spain, and is famous as the author of the Yedid Nefesh that we sing every Friday night before Kabbalat Shabbat. So he writes the following, text number 4. We are commanded to refrain even from the permissible, to not feverishly pursue desires or excessive sensuality like chickens, as the verse states, you shall be holy. So refraining from the permissible is not as clearly as something that is forbidden, but it is nevertheless something that God commands us to do in order to have a holy lifestyle. Now, the Sefer HaChinuch takes this even a little further, and it says that if someone seeks pleasures, is violating a clear mitzvah of the Torah that we read 3 times a day in the Shema Israel. Text number 5 says, one who follows the lead of the eyes and chases after worldly desires by engaging excessively in worldly pleasures for no higher purpose, such as keeping healthy so as to better serve God, but only for self-indulgence, such a person continuously transgresses this commandment that we say, Lo taturu acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem, don't deviate, don't stray after your eyes and after your heart. So the idea here that it's not everything that we're allowed to do, we should grab it, we should go for it. And the Hasidim of old had a beautiful ma'amar that the Rebbe quotes in the Ayom Yom, text number 6. In Yiddish sounds very good. Was men tornit, tomernit, was men meg, darf men nit, which means the Hasid Mordechai Rodoker related. The first aphorism we've learned from the Arte Rebbe when we arrive to Liozna is, what is forbidden, and what is permitted is unnecessary. Obviously, you can't generalize and say, water is permitted, so we're not going to say water is unnecessary. Obviously, water is very necessary, but soda or juice or alcoholic drinks, things like that, those are things that we can say this is unnecessary. So this is a very bold perspective way to serve Hashem in a way that we're not seeking physical pleasures. We're not going to eat what I like best, my favorite food, but I'm rather going to eat what I can serve God better with. So if I can eat something that is delicious, let's say, well, take me 2 hours to prepare, or I can eat something that is healthy and will take 20 minutes to prepare, guess which one is a better way of serving God? So the question is, after all, how bad is it if I don't do this? Let's say I do indulge. I spend 6 hours Googling what is the best kosher restaurant in town, or I do spend a lot of time in something that I get pleasure from it. So to understand this, we have to redefine the concept of good and bad. Because in general, when you ask someone, what is good? Good is something, that is, I'm helping someone. When I ask my students, what's a mitzvah? Oh, if I help an old lady carry some groceries. So yeah, that is a mitzvah, of course. But is that the only type of mitzvah there is? It's just doing godly stuff all the time or helping others. And if what is bad? Most people say, oh, bad is to hurt someone. Bad is to, do something that is forbidden. Is that only what is bad, or perhaps it's a little broader, the definition? So as we will learn today, nothing exists just because. Everything in the world has a soul. What do we call a soul? Obviously, a living being has a soul, but also the table, also inanimate objects, they have a godly spark that gives them their existence. And there is a reason why this physical thing, God decided that it must exist, and he gave it a soul, and there is a divine purpose for this physical object. So to understand this concept of the soul of things, if for one moment God will take away this divine force that is creating constantly the table will stop to exist, will disappear, as if never existed. So based on this understanding of all matter in the world, we can understand a little better now what is good and what is bad. Now, it's interesting. In the Kabbalah language and Hasidut as well, what do we call bad things? We call them klipa. Klipa means a peel or a shell. And why do we call the peel or the shell bad? It's quite comfortable, for instance, that an orange has a peel, because if I drop it, the fruit is not damaged. You can say the peel protects the fruit. Why are we calling the peel or the shell of something evil? So for that, we need to go to the Tanya, text number 7, where Alter Rebbe writes the following. The klipot, why do we call them klipot, shells? Because they dim and conceal the divine sparks from every angle, so that the divine light is no longer discernible in them, to the extent that they appear to exist independently of God. Thus, they are called kelipot, for the eye-like appeal, which wraps and encompasses the fruit contained inside of it. In a similar fashion, the Kelipot conceal the divine sparks, the soul that we're talking about, like an almond shell. The only way to extract the fruit is to break the shell. Likewise, to extract the sparks of holiness from the klipot that hide them, the klipot must be broken. So this is where we get the idea that of a zero-sum game, that everything's either good or evil. So the idea is either you're telling a godly story, meaning you're revealing godliness in the world, or you're concealing godliness. So if you're revealing godliness, you're good. If you're concealing it, this is the definition of evil. So it's a little difficult to process this concept that everything is either good or bad, but let's look at just a table. By definition, a table is klipa. Why? Because the table is not showing God. You look at the table and you don't see godliness revealed. You see, oh, this is a table. Seems to be something pretty solid, independent from God. I don't see a divine energy glowing inside it, giving it life. So therefore, it's a klipa. It's like a shell. I don't see God. It's bad. Now, why is it bad? Because it's telling a false narrative. It's telling us a false story. It's telling me there is no God here. There is a table. On the other hand, if you're able to reach into that soul, use it in a positive way, then it becomes godly. So it's interesting that convention states that we assume that someone is innocent until proven guilty, right? But here we're kind of saying the other way around. Something is concealing godliness until it starts to broadcast it or show it. So if something doesn't announce, I am created by God, there is a godly energy inside of me, by default, we consider it bad. Why? Because it's concealing godliness. And the whole purpose of the world is to broadcast, to show, to find godliness everywhere. Now, it's interesting that in going back to Kabbalistic terms, we don't call something bad, we call it sitra achara, which means the other side. Why? What does it mean, the other side? Let's see text number 8, also from the Tanya. It says, Kelipa includes any deeds under the sun that are all vanity and affliction of the spirit. Similarly, any word or thought that is not directed to God and to his will and his service. For this is the meaning of the term sitra achara, literally the other side, meaning not on the side of holiness. The side of holiness is nothing but the indwelling and extension of God's holiness. Now, God dwells only on that which is surrendered to him. Anything, however, that does not surrender to God, but it considers itself as if it's something on itself, separate, does not receive its life from the inner core of the holy, emanating life force, but from the back, so to speak. So greatly diminished does the light and life force become, diminution after diminution, that is able to become contracted and vested in a state of exile, between that seemingly independent entity, giving it vitality and existence, giving it life, and causing it to exist, but in such a way that it can say, I have nothing to do with God. I exist on my own. As Farah used to say, I created myself. So logically, makes sense, right? To pretend even, or to broadcast, or to say that I exist, or something exists independent of God, of course it's evil. So it's bad. But the problem is that God created the world this way. God created the table to look like it's independent. Why? Obviously, if we will see God everywhere, we will have no free choice. If we will see God's energy on the table, on the chair, on the food that we eat, how can we do anything wrong? So God, on one hand, created everything to conceal his energy, but on the other hand, we are supposed to find it. Now, how do we find it? How do we broadcast this godly energy? Only when I'm speaking in Hebrew, only when I'm doing mitzvot, only when I'm praying, or perhaps I can eat, drink, and sleep, and work, and also broadcast godliness. So now we're going to understand that there is different levels of klipa, different types of pills. And as everything in the Kabbalah, there is a very good reason why we use this term klipa, pill or shell, because just like tearing off the tag of a mattress, we said before, is not the same than armed robbery. Doing a little sin is not the same than a big one. So there is different types of klipa and different types of shells. Just to give an idea, like compare the peel of a grape with the shell of a walnut. They both protect the fruit, but in a very different manner. So let's see text 8b. Now, the klipot are divided in two categories, one lower than the other. The lower category, we call them shalosh klipot atmeot, the three completely unclean and evil klipot, containing no good whatsoever. From them come the souls of all unkosher, forbidden animals, and the sustaining force of their bodies, as well as the existence and life force for all forbidden vegetation. I say, well, vegetation, I thought all fruits and vegetables are kosher. He says, no, wait a minute, such as orla, the first 3 years, fruit of a tree, we are not allowed to eat. So the tree, after it becomes 3 years old, its fruit starts getting its energy from a whole different source. So for the first 3 years, gets from the three unclean klipot, and later starts getting, as we'll see, from the radiating klipa, which is much higher level. Kilaim also, mixture of grain seeds in a vineyard, and so forth. Similarly, the existence of life force of any act, utterance, or thought in violation of any one of the 365 biblical prohibitions and the rabbinic offshoots, all that comes from the three unclean klipot, the lowest level. However, there exists a different sort of klipa that animates the soul of kosher animals, birds, and fish, whose consumption is permissible, as well as the existence and life force of any vegetation or inanimate matter that is permissible for consumption. This lesser category of klipa also animates the existence and vitality of all acts, utterances, and thoughts in mundane matters that are in no way forbidden, but are not performed for the sake of heaven, as they ought to be, meaning to utilize the body as an instrument of service to God. All these are derived from the second time of klipot and sitra hara, which is the fourth klipa, called Kelipat Noga, the klipa that shines. Why we call it klipa that shines? Because the energy of God shines through it, just like the peel of a grape. You know, the shell of a walnut is so thick that if you never cracked one before, you have no idea what's inside. Could be anything, because it's hard, it's dark, and it doesn't let light shine through it. But the peel of a grape, not only that is clear, that you can see what's inside, you can feel if it's soft or hard, but even you can eat that peel, meaning it could be used in a positive way. So the difference between the evil klipot and the klipa that shines is that the evil klipa is something that we must stay away from. Nothing you can do can elevate. It's like the shell of a walnut. You can't eat it, you can't chew it, even if you have very good teeth. I wouldn't recommend it. Only when Mashiach comes, God will smash it open, and then we'll be able to see what's inside there. But until then, we avoid, we refrain. But the klipa that shines is, what does it mean? It's a klipa. It conceals, it doesn't broadcast that God is here, but it's not in opposition to that. Not only that, but if you work with it, you can make the light of God shine. And just like the peel of a grape, you can eat it, you can make it good, you can utilize it. So an example is to have a good breakfast in the morning, which we know it's important. There is two ways we can have a breakfast. One, oh, this is my favorite food, and I'm enjoying it so much, this is delicious, and I'm gonna eat as much as I desire. Then, even though the food is kosher and everything, but you're not serving God, you're serving yourself. You're eating to satisfy your pleasure. Or you can say, I'm going to eat a good breakfast because I need energy to serve God all day, to be productive, to be help my family, to be a good member of society. I need energy, I need food, and that's why I'm having an healthy breakfast. So next text, number 9, explains a little better what is this idea of the difference. This latter category of klipa is an intermediary between the 3 completely impure klipot and the realm of holiness. Therefore, it sometimes becomes included in the impure klipot, and sometimes is elevated and included into a holy space. This occurs when the good mixed into the klipat noga is extracted from the evil and rises above to become included in holiness. For example, when one eats fatty beef and drinks spiced wine, not for personal pleasure. So why do you do it? But to open the mind for the service of God and the study of His Torah. As Rabbah said, wine and fragrance make my mind more receptive. Likewise, when one eats meat and drinks wine to fulfill his obligation to enjoy the Shabbat and festivals. In these instances, the life force of the meat and wine which flows from Klipat Noga is extracted and elevated to God like an offering. That's why I like to quote the Talmud that says during the week we eat whole wheat, and on Shabbat we eat white flour. Why? Because during the week we have to eat just to serve God, what's healthiest, and on Shabbat, on the other hand, our mind could be a little more expanded. We should have a little more luxury because it's a mitzvah to enjoy, because that's the day that the whole world is elevated. So the whole world is closer to Hashem, and it's easier to eat something that is delicious and do it for God rather than yourself. A similar thing happens when one uses humor to sharpen the mind and gladden the heart for the divine service and Torah study which require joy. Rabba always will start his lessons with a joke. Why? So it will bring his students to a good cheer, and those who will be more interested in the lesson, they will be paying attention. They'll say, oh, the rabbi is going to start with a joke. Let's listen. And then they'll continue listening, hopefully. By contrast, one who eats meat gluttonously and imbibes wine to satisfy the desires of his body, an animal soul, causes the life force of the meat and wine he ingested to be temporarily absorbed between the complete evil of the three impure klipot. So we have a deeper understanding now of good and bad. So what is good? Something when we broadcast godliness, and bad is when we cover godliness. Now, something that denies the divine truth, it's bad. And as we said, there is different levels of how much the concealment of the godly energy is. We compare it to different kinds of pills, thicker, thinner, etc. So now we'll understand better the concept of kosher and non-kosher. So usually we say that it's a legal term. Kosher means something that is allowed. But we are going to learn today that it's more of a behavioral term. Kosher is something that has to do with the behavior of a person with our conduct, something that we can fix, as opposed to asur, something that is forbidden, is so tied down. That's what asur means, to be tied down to, with the impurity that we cannot elevate it. So, for instance, pork, it's trapped, it's tied down, it's asur. It doesn't matter how many blessings I say before, or if I eat it on Shabbat, of course not, or what I do with the energy is asur, is tied down, as opposed to mutar means free. Something, an orange that is kosher, it's free, doesn't mean it's purely good, but it's free, I can use it for goodness. As the text number 10 says, this is implied in the terms heter, something permissible, or mutar, meaning something is not tied and bound by the power of the sitra hara, the extraneous forces, preventing it from returning and ascending to God. By contrast, forbidden foods and illicit relations which are derived from the three entirely unclean klipot are indeed tied and bound, asur, by these kelipot, by these forces of evil, forever. The divine energy of these forbidden acts are not elevated from the klipot until their day comes, namely when Mashiach will come and death will be swallowed up forever. So, to recap, klipa is anything that conceals the divine spark, the soul that gives existence to everything, physical, everything that doesn't express, doesn't broadcast godliness, it's bad. Why? Because it's lying, so to speak. It's concealing the godly. Sorry about that. It's concealing the godly energy. And we explained that there is different klipot. There is the hardcore evil klipot that completely conceal godliness, which is anything forbidden. And there is the klipa that shines, that is everything that's permissible, whatever is not forbidden. So now we understand why it's so important to sometimes at least refrain from the permissible. Because the fact that something is not bound, is not trapped in the evil, doesn't mean that it's not harmless. You know, the fact that wine is kosher doesn't mean I can drink gallons of wine, or liters, or cup. It has the ability to drag a person down. So there is two ways to look at everything I do. Either what I do is about myself or what I do is about God. As we said earlier, it's binary. So if the world is about me, then I do what I enjoy there. Then, well, going back to our original question, when I'm sitting on my couch and watching a game and drinking a beer and eating pretzels, if it's about me, then it's not good. I'm concealing godliness. If I'm doing it because I realize from time to time I need to relax and I need to clear my mind in order to be more productive later, then it's not forbidden, it's good. I realize that I'm doing this only because I need it, and my goal is to serve God. So doesn't mean that I can never indulge engage in the things that I like, but when I do them, I have to have the right frame of mind. Let's see, page 35, text 11 says the permissible, when done for one's pleasure, is completely evil. As the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya chapter 7, for we are commanded, sanctify yourself with what is permitted to you. One must introduce sanctity in those matters that are permissible so that they serve the purpose of enhancing one's Torah, mitzvot, fear of God, and good character traits. So far seems like the Rebbe is saying what we said before, but then he says something new. He says, when you introduce sanctity in those matters, you are serving God. So this is a tremendous opportunity to introduce holiness, meaning you don't have to be learning Torah, praying all day. You can be working, you can be running, you can be enjoying what you do, and you do it in a godly way because you're doing it to serve God. This is an amazing opportunity. So it's interesting that this is key to bring Mashiach. Not just to do the mitzvot, what we are supposed to do, not just follow the letter of the law, but to go beyond that, to find ways to serve God when I'm eating, when I'm drinking, when I'm sleeping even. That's the key to Mashiach, because that's exactly what will happen when Mashiach comes. The whole world will be united together, proclaiming, serving, looking for a way to serve Hashem. So this is really the way to serve God, not just when you're doing mitzvot, but to find God in all your paths, in everything you do, find God. So text number 12 says, there is a unique advantage to sanctifying oneself with what is permitted relative to the general notion of fulfilling Torah mitzvot, because religious devotion, as it's expressed by refraining from what's allowed, uniquely evokes the essence of divinity, which transcends the degree of divinity evoked by the generic form of divine service. Thus, sanctifying yourself with what is permitted plays an acute role in completing the home for God in this world, inasmuch as creates a divine essence similar to a human home where a person is able to be fully expressed. Similarly, the ultimate abode for God in this world is such that the entire world and everything in it become a home to God's essence. This is accomplished when our divine service is not performed only with matters of Torah or mitzvot, but rather extends even to our mundane lives by sanctifying what is permitted to us. So imagine, what is the difference between a simple home and a palace that is tailor-made for the king? Using, as soon as you come in, you see the coat of arms of the king. And everywhere is the favorite designs and the favorite colors of the king. So the king's personality is expressed in every detail of this palace. So this is exactly the way we serve Hashem. We are not serving God only when we pray, only when we learn Torah. Every aspect of our lives, we elevate it and we bring it to Hashem. This is what the Rebbe writes in text 13. The uniqueness of the future redemption is that then the essence who God is will be revealed at the dimension far superior to the God who relates to the world we know of. As is well documented, Mashiach will herald the completion of the word's very purpose, to create a home for the divine in the mundane. When we say home, we mean a home for the very essence. A home is where you're most comfortable. Think about it in the terms of a human house. It's the place where a person can truly be expressed, not just certain qualities, rather all of him or her. The same is true for the home we are trying to create for God. It ought to be a home for all of God, His essence. It is possible that a person studies Torah and fulfills mitzvot, yet they retain their identity, the sense of self. The thing that is, when it comes to religious duties, they suppress that sense of self and sacrifice it to God. In such a paradigm, God has only reached the outer ring of their soul. However, when a person refrains from permissible matters and they abstain from their own personal matters, then the terms have changed. They no longer have a personal corner. Rather, they have abandoned all sense of self, for God has touched the very core of their soul. Now, you can ask, how can someone surrender so much to Hashem? How can say, I don't exist anymore, I'm only serving God? The idea, the reality is very different, because when you ask, who am I? Am I this flesh and bones, this tongue and stomach that they enjoy food or they want to indulge in certain activities? Or am I a divine spark of God, a divine soul? So yes, if you think that you are flesh and bones, then you can never surrender to Hashem. But if you realize that we are a soul, we are part of God, that's our soul. So we're not surrendering to something foreign, to something else. We are surrounding to our own souls. We are doing what I really want, which is my soul. And the Rebbe ends, when a person completely abandons their personal matters, instead, every daily activity is an act of God, the person becomes a godly asset in the sense that their entire sense of self is godly, which is your true self, which is your soul. So, to wrap up everything that we learned today, it's a very tall order to act this way, to be selfless and devote everything we do to God. It might even seem frightening. How can I completely stop to exist? But we have to realize that the world is binary. Either is what I'm doing is good or bad. Even I'm broadcasting God or I'm concealing God. There is no neutral ground. So in one hand, it seems very dogmatic, a little scary even, but on the other hand, it's very empowering to think that everything we do, not just the big stuff like praying on Yom Kippur, that the jog I take in the morning, I can make it godly. It's a tremendous opportunity. So next time I have a few minutes to do whatever I want, free time, I can think, I don't have to open a book. Of course, if you want to open Talmud and learn Talmud, very godly. But if I have a choice in between sitting in front of the TV or going to exercise, do what's godly. Do something that will be good for your emotional and physical health. Why? So you can serve God better. To watch another half an hour of news, I doubt that will make you a better person. To exercise, to work out, to do something that's healthy, take a walk outside, enjoy God's beautiful world and nature, it will make you a better vessel for serving Hashem. So the idea is that we want to achieve a level of self-mastery that is not just as a personal victory, but as a way to dedicate myself to God. So going back to our original question, is watching a game, drinking beer, and having pretzels good or bad? And the answer is, depends what's on your mind. If you're doing it to relax, to have a good time, in order to later be more productive because you need downtime, it's human nature, it's fine. But you have to do something productive that day as well. If not, it was a waste of time. And if you're doing it just to indulge, then obviously you're concealing godliness. So today, the word mindfulness, it's a big buzzword. It's a very Jewish concept. A life of purpose doesn't mean having no fun, but to be aware that we're ambassadors of Hashem, to broadcast His divine light in a world that sometimes could be dark. So next time we have to decide what to do with a few minutes. We have to think, okay, what way can I serve Hashem better in the next few minutes? What do I need to be a better person, to be healthier, to be happier? And then we serve God in that way. So the fact that something is allowed, going back to it, doesn't mean we have to indulge in it. The mitzvah of our parasha is kadesh atzmecha vemutar lach. Sanctify yourself with what is allowed. Don't engage. Everybody understands this. Don't indulge too much in everything that is allowed. But when you sanctify yourself with things that we are allowed to do, with mundane activities, we are living already like in Mashiach times, and may God bless us that very soon we'll live in actual Mashiach times. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask now. I spoke for a long time without questions, so you're welcome to ask. My father used to say, when there is no questions, means either everybody understood everything and was very clear, or no one understood anything at all.
No, I don't think
was
this
nice.
is the case.
Wake me up.
We understood, but we need to time to digest.
It's, Hasidic philosophy is extremely, extremely demanding. That's the, others say, yeah, as soon as you do mitzvot, as soon as you eat kosher, you're fine. But this stuff, it's completely different way to look at things. It's every single minute, basically, you are serving God, and you have to find ways to do it right.
Actually, I feel much more connected to this view of the world rather than the other view that only if you do mitzvot you are sanctified. This is much more appealing to me.
Good. Yes. It's also my father used to say, more important than how you fast in Yom Kippur is how you eat after Yom Kippur. To fast in a godly way, it's easy. To eat in a godly way, it's more challenging. That's the.
I also, when I fast in Yom Kippur, I usually don't think it as something that it's difficult or something. I see it in another way. I see it like you don't have to worry what to eat because you need to fast. So you don't have to think on eating. So you think on the tefillah you do. So it's awesome.
Yes, I was just reading that it's a day that you don't have to worry about. You don't want to eat on that day. There is no temptation, I think, even to. We are like angels on that day. So it's beautiful. Okay. Thank you all for joining. Looking forward to the next class, God willing, very soon.
No verbal.
Yes, to be together under the same roof, God willing. Let's hope it happens soon.
Quick question, not related to what you spoke about. Counting of the Omer, what is the latest time you can count the Omer with a bracha?
You can count all night until an hour and 15 minutes before sunrise, which is about 4:43 now. So if you went to bed and you forgot, but you wake up at 20 to 5 in the morning, you can say the bracha while it's completely dark. As soon as you can still start to see a little bit of light, it's too late.
Okay, thank you.
Pleasure. Good one. Okay. Good evening, everybody.
Okay.
I'll answer your text soon, Leo.
Good evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Have a
It was
great
nice.
weekend.
Okay, thank
Hey,
you.
Mika, how are you? You too.
Good. How are you?
We need to see you.